the right to bear arms, a cornerstone of American freedom. This fundamental right is deeply embedded in the fabric of our nation, symbolizing the spirit of independence and self-reliance that defines America. The Second Amendment of the United States Constitution guarantees the right of individuals to keep and bear arms. This provision was included by the Founding Fathers to ensure that citizens would have the means to protect themselves, their families, and their property. This right is absolute. It is a fundamental individual right that has been recognized by the Supreme Court. Over the years, numerous court cases have debated the extent and limitations of this right, but its core principle remains intact. Gun control laws, however, infringe upon this right by placing restrictions on law-abiding citizens who wish to own firearms for self-defense, hunting, or other lawful purposes. These laws can create significant barriers for responsible gun owners, making it difficult for them to exercise their constitutional rights. The Founding Fathers understood the importance of an armed citizenry. They believed that a well-armed populace was crucial for the preservation of liberty and the prevention of tyranny. They knew that an armed populace was essential to deter tyranny and ensure a free state. The experiences of the Revolutionary War underscored the necessity of a well-armed citizenry in the fight for independence. Today, the Second Amendment remains as relevant as ever, serving as a bulwark against government overreach and a guarantee of individual liberty. It empowers citizens to stand up for their rights and defend themselves against potential threats. Unfortunately, the right to bear arms is under constant assault. Various groups and individuals, often driven by fear and misunderstanding, seek to impose stricter regulations that could undermine this God-given right. Gun control advocates, often driven by emotion rather than logic, seek to chip away at this fundamental right through a patchwork of laws and regulations. They argue that stricter gun laws will lead to a decrease in gun violence, but the evidence does not support this claim. These laws, while well-intentioned, miss the mark and fail to address the root causes of gun violence. Instead of focusing on the tools used in crimes, we should be addressing the underlying issues such as mental health, poverty, and social inequality. The reality is that criminals, by their very nature, disregard the law. They do not follow legal procedures and will always find ways to circumvent regulations. They do not care about gun-free zones, background checks, or waiting periods. These measures often only serve to disarm law-abiding citizens, leaving them vulnerable to those who have no regard for the law. They will always find ways to obtain firearms illegally, regardless of the restrictions placed on law-abiding citizens. The black market thrives on such restrictions, providing criminals with easy access to weapons usually at cheaper prices than purchasing by legal means. Instead of imposing more restrictions, we should focus on promoting responsible gun ownership and education. Programs that teach gun safety and proper handling can help reduce accidents and misuse. By fostering a culture of responsibility and respect for firearms, we can ensure that the right to bear arms continues to be a cornerstone of American freedom, protecting our liberties for generations to come. Gun control, a labyrinth of laws. Navigating through this maze can be daunting, as it involves understanding a myriad of regulations that vary widely across different jurisdictions. All gun control laws are unconstitutional as long as the Second Amendment stands. Gun control encompasses a wide range of laws and regulations aimed at restricting or regulating firearms. These laws are designed to enhance public safety by controlling who can own guns, what types of guns can be owned, and how they can be used. Gun control is not about the gun, it is about control. These laws can vary significantly at the federal, state, and local levels, creating a complex and often confusing patchwork of regulations. For instance, what is legal in one state may be completely illegal in another, leading to a lack of uniformity that can be challenging for citizens to navigate. At the federal level, gun control laws include the National Firearms Act of 1934, which regulates fully automatic weapons and sawed-off shotguns. This act was one of the first major federal gun control laws and set the stage for future legislation. This act is completely unconstitutional, as Congress was never given the power to regulate firearms. The Gun Control Act of 1968 further expanded federal regulations by establishing a federal licensing system for firearms dealers and prohibiting the sale of firearms to certain individuals, such as felons and the mentally ill. This act was a response to the assassinations of prominent figures like John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr., which highlighted the need for stricter gun control measures. State and local governments have also enacted a wide range of gun control measures, including bans on certain types of firearms, restrictions on magazine capacity, and requirements for background checks and waiting periods. These measures are often tailored to address specific concerns within each state or locality. Background checks are a critical component of gun control laws, designed to prevent individuals with criminal records or mental health issues from obtaining firearms. Waiting periods are also implemented to provide a cooling-off period, reducing the likelihood of impulsive acts of violence. Some states have also implemented red flag laws, which allow law enforcement to temporarily confiscate firearms from individuals deemed a danger to themselves or others without due process. These laws are intended to prevent potential tragedies by intervening before a crisis occurs. These laws are also unconstitutional due to the fact they deprive someone of their rights without due process. The problem with this patchwork of laws is that they often create a false sense of security. While these regulations are designed to protect the public, their effectiveness is limited by the inconsistencies and loopholes that exist between different jurisdictions. Criminals who operate outside the law are not deterred by these regulations. They will continue to find ways to obtain firearms illegally, exploiting the gaps in the system to their advantage. Meanwhile, law-abiding citizens are left vulnerable, often finding themselves caught in the crossfire of these complex regulations. The debate over gun control continues to be a contentious issue, with strong arguments on both sides regarding the balance between public safety and individual rights. Any and all gun laws and restrictions at any level of government is unconstitutional. The only way to restrict firearm ownership in America is to first pass an amendment to the Constitution changing or repealing the Second Amendment. The labyrinth of laws surrounding gun control is not easily navigated, but through informed dialogue and collaborative efforts, there is hope for creating a more coherent and effective framework that protects both public safety and individual freedoms. Criminals and gun laws, a recipe for disaster. The intersection of criminal activity and gun legislation is a complex and often contentious issue. When we examine the relationship between those who break the law and the regulations intended to control firearms, we uncover a troubling reality. Criminals, by their very nature, disregard the law. They operate outside the boundaries of legal and moral codes, driven by motives that often include personal gain, power, or desperation. This fundamental disregard for the law means that they are not swayed by the presence of gun control measures. They are not deterred by gun control laws because they have no intention of following them in the first place. These individuals find ways to circumvent regulations, obtaining firearms through illegal means such as black markets, theft, or straw purchases. The existence of gun control laws does little to impede their access to weapons. To assume that criminals will suddenly become law-abiding citizens simply because a new gun control law is passed is not only moronic but also dangerous. This assumption overlooks the reality that those who are intent on committing crimes will continue to do so, regardless of the legal landscape. It places undue faith in the power of legislation to change deeply ingrained behaviors. Gun control laws only serve to disarm law-abiding citizens, leaving them vulnerable to criminals who are already breaking the law by possessing firearms illegally. These regulations often place restrictions on those who follow the rules, making it more difficult for them to protect themselves and their loved ones. When law-abiding citizens are disarmed, criminals have a distinct advantage, knowing that their victims are less likely to be able to defend themselves. This creates a dangerous imbalance, where those who respect the law are left defenseless against those who do not. It's like putting up a "No Guns Allowed" sign in a dangerous neighborhood and expecting criminals to abide by it. Such signs may deter law-abiding citizens, but they do little to stop those who are intent on causing harm. The presence of a sign does not change the intentions of a criminal. They seek out easy targets and prey on the vulnerable. Criminals look for opportunities where they can commit their crimes with minimal risk to themselves. This often means targeting individuals who are less likely to be able to defend themselves. Disarming law-abiding citizens only creates more easy targets for criminals. When people are unable to protect themselves, they become more attractive targets for those who wish to do them harm. This not only increases the risk for individuals, but also undermines the overall sense of safety in a community. Instead of focusing on disarming law-abiding citizens, we should be focusing on enforcing existing laws and holding criminals accountable for their actions. Strengthening the enforcement of current regulations can help to deter criminal activity and ensure that those who break the law face appropriate consequences. We need to stop making excuses for criminals and start holding them responsible for their choices. We need to stop allowing prosecutors to plead out cases for an easy win, allowing violent offenders out on the street and putting the communities in danger.